these, they're not the nicest lights, I'm going to be honest with you. Kind of more budget lighting. That's not to detract from this podcast, though. So.
Well, welcome.
Thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
That's good.
I listened to our podcast this week.
Which one?
The last one.
Okay.
The last one that dropped.
Yep. How was that for you?
I came to some conclusions.
Uh-oh. About me?
No, about me.
Okay. Which are?
I don't mind my little momentary clearing of my throat every now and then. I think it's my signature.
That's
so
your move.
I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to lean into it today.
Oh, gosh.
So
prep for that. Yeah. That's cool. How did you listen to it? Did you listen through Apple or Spotify?
Spotify.
Because it's pretty evenly split, but Apple Podcast seems to be more popular amongst our legion
I'm just used to listening to my music on Spotify, and it comes up.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. That was... still haven't heard anything from my family.
So they're not listening.
So they're not listening, so that's good. That's good. How was your trip? Didn't you fly? You caught a flight last time, right? Yeah, you had to catch a flight. Pretty sure. Was that the time before?
I think the time before.
Oh. Well, the turntables, because Haley and I are catching a flight after this one.
Oh. Okay.
Not like right after, but
okay.
She's going to come by. I should shut the door. She's going to come by probably at the tail end of our session. Actually, not this one, but the next one.
She's going to tell me all the things I'm doing wrong?
No.
Or give me a list of things I should be asking you?
That is a complete opposite of Haley. That's something Alex would do. It is not something that Haley would do. Yeah. So, where do I begin?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Have
you been thinking about this stuff that we've been talking about?
Kind of. I've sort of been purposefully not thinking about it.
Okay. Because?
Well, I talked to George about it, and he was like, hey, we should work on, what was it, 3 weeks ago?
Like role-playing conversations with your dad? Or,
yeah. And I was like, okay, but I have not brought it up since. And I keep purposefully not bringing it up because I am legit. I don't want to do it. This is one of the few things where, I seem very have at it. Let's do it.
Yeah, right.
This is not one of those things for me. I do not want to do it just because I know it'll make me feel very uncomfortable. So I'm avoiding it, which is, I don't know, kind of makes me crank, kind of makes me angry, not frustrated, I guess. Because it's that's a way forward.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change if you don't do anything about it, Alex. But
unless Dad hears the podcast and initiates some kind of conversation around it.
Right. Oh, that would, unless. But the more proactive, the healthier version of Alex would work through it and then have a conversation.
I don't know.
You don't know.
Healthier version, I don't know. You can beat yourself up around that if you want, but you can also just go easier on yourself and say you're still waiting until the opportunity's right.
Yeah.
Maybe the answer is an opportunity never will be right, and you'll miss an opportunity.
Yeah, that would make me sad, though. I think you and I talked about this, but I ultimately would like to have a kind of conversation like that.
Yeah. You're worried about how it's going to go and how he's going to react to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think practicing makes it more real. And so naturally, I'm like, I don't want to practice because then that'll be one step closer to doing it. Yeah. But I had a session with George this morning.
Yeah.
So I got to see him. We talked. And I couldn't pinpoint anything that's wrong. But I did today especially, I just definitely, I don't feel great. I feel kind of depressed even, which I haven't said in a while, but yeah, I don't know. it's like equal parts sort of frustrated and angry, and I don't know, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed or what, but yeah, I don't feel great today. But I'm excited, going on a trip with Haley. We're going for the weekend, relaxing trip to Florida.
See your folks?
They are actually not there. That's why we're going down.
Okay. Oh, you really planned this out, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I talked to him about it too. I was like, hey, I know you guys are going to be out of town. Can we stay at your place? My mom was like, sure. Why don't you come visit me while I'm here? She didn't say that. But so and that'll be fun and relaxing. But yeah, today's an off day for Alex.
So do you read a lot into that, or can you just have an off day?
I read a lot into it.
Mm-hmm. That's my sense.
Yeah. Because I'm sure it's quite normal to have off days.
Of course.
Yeah, but in my brain, it's like, nope, you know what that is? That's the mastery speaking.
Probably. And then probably really bad on a day when you go to therapy and think, oh, I've got to talk about this off day. I mean, you're not even probably presenting it like an off day. It's like I feel really down. And
True. I mean, I definitely feel down. Like how do you articulate what's like an off day? What's like the difference between an off day and being depressed, would you say? Depression probably is a lot of off days in a row.
Probably. Stringing them together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just weird to be like, I can't figure out what might be causing me to feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird to consider, hey, that's the whole point. It's kind of like the weather. It changes. No one really knows. Meteorologists try to, but they don't. That's such a foreign concept for me to be like, oh, there's no cause and effect. Like, surely there's a cause. That's why there's the effect. But it would be cool if, like, the takeaway was, it's not big. No, it's not a big deal at all. You're just having an off day. There's nothing to read into. So yeah, I spent an hour trying to think of all the things that were making me unhappy that I could think of.
So what's the difference between having an off day and being unhappy? I mean, I think, like, for me, an off day might include not being as productive as I need to be, or maybe I'm feeling under the weather and I'm spending more time in bed than I typically do, or an off day maybe a day I don't start with exercise or something, like when I'm not feeling like up to my regular or whatever.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's like that, but more so self-talk, like the way I talk to myself, and the things I think about, and how I feel about my outlook. Is life going the right way? Am I doing a good job? Yeah.
But that's a big one, right? Is life going the right way? That's a big global kind of thing to put on an off day.
Correct. So I guess my point being, like, for me, an off day is like, maybe it's a result of me reading into the off day too much, but like, I just feel as though things aren't going well. It's less about like, oh, I'm kind of sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm being a bit lazy. I'm not, it's more so like, oh, I'm having existential dilemmas today. Yeah. Today's an existential dilemma day for Alex. And George and I talked about it. I try again. I was just like, it's like I'm like, is this what's making me feel like shit? Is this what's making me feel like shit? I was like, I don't think so. Like, life is good for the most part. And that might be a bit of that mastery rearing its head. But I don't like reading into things too much. I'd prefer to just be comfortable with, hey, so you feel kind of down today.
Yeah, I was just about to say, what if I told you I think you're reading into things too much?
My initial response would be like, classic Dr. Steve, telling me I'm reading into it too much.
Do I do that a lot?
Yes. I don't know. From my side of the chair.
It's the only perspective you've got, right?
Yes. From this perspective, yes. and it is something that I sometimes worry about or is top of mind. Like, for example, sometimes I get stressed out about whether or not what I'm going to say is interesting to you. Right? And if you're going to be like, okay. And I think last session was a good example of that, where I just sometimes feel like, oh, he doesn't think it's, worth talking about.
It's not rising to the level of concern.
It doesn't, well, the voice in my head is like, oh, he's thinking like, this doesn't meet my like threshold of importance, basically. And so that kind of annoys me. So hearing like, maybe you're just overthinking it. It's like, okay, true. And also the experience of overthinking it, not pleasant.
Right.
Would love to not.
Yeah.
Don't know how to control it. Don't know why it exists. It is unpleasant. Because like, it's unpleasant to spend a day ruminating about like, oh, things are bad. Alex, you're doing a bad job. Like, the reason you feel this way is because things are bad. Not recommending anyone do that because, again, it's not pleasant. But I don't know why maybe I need to practice on just when I experience that to be like, it's okay. Everything's fine. But it's hard for me to trust that everything's okay. I assume, again, cause and effect.
There's a part of me that thinks that when you're in those moments, the only thing that really gets you out of those moments is focusing on somebody else. Because those moments are entire moments of self-focus. Why is my life not going right? Why am I not doing well? Why is this coming to me? Why am I here right now? And I wonder if you had outlets where you're able to do things for other people.
Just not, because it's very self-centered. Not I'm criticizing myself, but I mean, it's just
self-focused.
Yeah. As opposed to like, it would be a breath of fresh air to not think about myself for a day, just completely distract myself from myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It's like what a day of service. What are the kinds of activity, I'd be interested to learn more about like, what are things that people do to take their minds off of themselves?
Sometimes they have kids.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes just having kids makes that happen.
Yeah. I could spend more time focusing on Haley and what's new with her. Yeah. I think that's the drawback in my experience of the therapy work and the amount of therapy that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Is sometimes it plays into this self-focus.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it would be cool to just
like if George or myself or somebody said, "Hey, Alex, you're okay."
I would immediately start arguing with you. That's what, like, honestly, I'd be like, oh, you think so? Because this. And I do that with George sometimes, and I feel like he gets frustrated because he has to keep reminding me the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Not like actually frustrated, but he's more like, oh, okay, we're doing this again, Alex. Where, for example, today I was talking to him about, I think, either I'm having like a quote unquote moment where it's like, okay, I'm having an off week, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought that I've been ruminating on is like my creative work, right? And my talent.
Mm-hmm.
Am I good enough? The things I'm making. The short film I finished, is it good? I've been worrying about like just my abilities. Do I write well enough? Do I direct well enough? I don't know. And I was really down on that. And then, George had to spend some time like walking through, well, hey, you've shown me your work and here's what I think of, we've seen this progress and you've gotten this feedback and this has been well received. And, and it's like, okay, yeah, things are, that thought is a little irrational.
Yeah.
It's still very persistent though. So whether it's a critique of, for example, an insecurity about my abilities, my creative abilities, Whether it's that, the voice is talking about that, or more generally, the voice is like, hey, yeah, things must not be going right because you're feeling this way. It's just very persistent. And I assume it's like an alarm going off. It's like, oh, I got to pay attention to this, right? Like when you hear a fire alarm or something, you're not like, oh, it's just a fire alarm. It's okay. That's sort of how I think I respond to thoughts, voices that are negative. I assume I have to listen to them. Mm. And it is not a pleasant. Yeah, I'll be the first to say that I don't enjoy it, and it is irrational. But it's also sometimes it's tough in the moment to remember that it's just a voice, and that's something I struggle with during my off days. Mm-hmm.
And my sense is that you're like a lot of people who have these inner voices and thoughts about yourself. You're probably your harshest critic.
Yeah.
And the question is, are they a preponderance of what's going on in your mind, or are they fewer and further between?
What does the word preponderance mean?
Dang.
Gotcha.
You call my bluff.
I gotcha.
The vast amount, preponderance, the preponderance of evidence suggests.
Got it.
The most part of.
Yeah.
Put that in your ACT test and smoke it.
Yep. Who's to say? At the end of the day, I'm inclined to believe it's more so just, hey, I haven't been sleeping well last couple of nights, so this could be all a natural, just the ebb and flow of being a human being. I'm tired, and as such, my mind is being a little cranky. And yeah, because again, things are fine. There's no major negative events.
So go back to feeling like some pressure to come up with something good that's going to rise to the level of something that I might think is important.
Yeah.
Is that a podcast worry? Like, we got to give good content. I'm responsible for good content, and so I got to give Dr. Steve something that he can work with, or is that I got to something else? I mean,
I would say it's a little bit of that, but also I know it's also, I think, a style difference maybe between us, or I worry that it is.
Mm-hmm. Or a style that you're used to in therapy versus my style that you're getting to know, or
Yeah, because as you know, I'm a very vicissitude guy. Like, for example, today in my session with George, we spent like 30 minutes talking about AI.
Okay.
And that was probably not something you and I would do. Spend 30 minutes talking about AI, because I feel like you'd be like, okay, what does this have to do with anything?
I would ask that question eventually.
Yeah. So, to quote The Simpsons, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Column B being like, I don't know, sometimes I feel pressure to, that you're not like judging me, but that you're kind of like, hey, this isn't important stuff. Mm-hmm. Which I know you've never said that, but sometimes I feel that way, and it can feel frustrating to be like, I understand that on the surface, everything I might be talking about seems kind of trivial, but the experience of going through it is still, unpleasant and annoying. And I sometimes wonder if people, I feel like everybody probably knows the depths of their own self-criticalness, right? And how mean we can be to ourselves sometimes. Mm-hmm. But that, it's not pleasant. And so when I hear like, well, maybe just don't think about it, I get a little bit ruffled where I'm like, okay, yeah, duh. I'd love to not think about it. That's the problem.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the feedback that you heard me give today. I mean, I wanted to say I think you dwell on things too much, but so then the question is, how do I not dwell on things? How do I not think about it, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it sounds like there's a voice inside your head, or one of the voices in your head is about, I want to make sure that when I'm in therapy, I'm talking about real things, or I want to make sure that the stuff that I'm talking about rises to a level of import, or it rises to a level of legitimacy. Otherwise, why am I in therapy?
Yeah. And also, too, I want to, back to our situation, I mean, do some of the things I say, like, bore you, for lack of a better word? Are you ever like, oh, Alex is talking about just some stuff that I have no interest in whatsoever?
No, because for me, I feel like if there are things you're talking about, they're important to you.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the agenda.
Yep.
But you got feedback from a TikTok person who said, "What was it? Be soft, or you're too soft. You're too soft, or something."
Stop
like
being
that.
Stop being soft.
Stop being soft.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd love to have a dialogue. I'd love you to have a dialogue with that person, right? Like, well, what do you mean I'm being soft? Am I a whiner?
Yeah.
I mean, do people like? I think this is a tough venture that you and I are in.
Yeah.
To accommodate like good content. So when I tell people about the podcast, I say, like, oh, you have a podcast? I'm like, yeah, I tell the story about how you and I found each other, how you found me, basically. And I say, start listening at about episode number 4.
Yeah.
Because I think we're finding ourselves. And when I say that to my therapist friends, they say, yeah, that's just like therapy.
Yeah.
Because you come in and you divulge, and then the therapist kind of gets a sense as to, okay, this is how it's gonna go. And then we started having more real conversations, I think.
Yeah.
We never once have had a conversation about the cloud you saw and it reminded you of something, right? That was one of our entrees.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things you said to me, like just what therapy can be.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because from my experience, there have been a couple episodes, and I've talked to George about this, where I've like, I feel like I'm boring him, or, seriously. And, yeah, it has been, there are times where, like, for example, today, I think I was already a little bit like, okay, I'm a little bit down. It's like, I don't really know what to talk about. And if I don't say, interesting stuff, Dr. Steve's going to be like, oh, well, why are you wasting my time, buddy? And that was a thought that was running through my head, which, sounds irrational, but yeah, that was there swimming around. But it sounds like it's not true.
That it's not true that you're boring me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Uh-huh. That's good. Would you tell me if I was?
Yeah. I mean, if you were boring me and I felt like I was falling asleep, usually if I'm falling asleep, I feel like we're not talking about the right thing.
Yeah, because I remember you said that before.
Right.
And I remember you gave that example of when you were chatting with a client and it was like right after or the day of 9/11 or something like that. And they were just talking about something completely random.
And here we had all gone through this huge trauma and we weren't talking about it.
So not exactly a one
right.
one comparison, but an instance where you're like, hey, I don't think,
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do the mundane.
Mm-hmm. And like
complaining about what I feel is mundane today.
And I think that's something that when I heard that, I sort of interpreted that as like, oh, okay, I definitely don't want to give Dr. Steve mundane stuff to talk about.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's like a level of like, okay, how mundane is this on the scale of mundanity? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to present it to Dr. Steve if it's, not important enough. So, yeah.
So even if it I feel like when I sit down in this chair, my job is to respect whatever it is that comes out of your mouth, but also respectfully challenge sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so if I feel like you're wallowing in self-pity or like you're just like, if the part of the script is Alex is looking for things to be bad that he can talk about in therapy, then I want to challenge that a little bit. Like Like sometimes, I mean, maybe it's like, I don't actually have anything to say in therapy today.
Yeah.
So maybe we do talk about AI if the keeping the appointment is important, or keeping that relationship with your therapist is important.
Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, I definitely would never, like, for the sake of this podcast, I don't think I would ever reach and be like, okay, I have to think of something that's wrong with me, right? And like make stuff up. Like, I don't know why I feel.
Yeah, I don't think you'd make stuff up either.
Yeah.
But I think that we also are coming off of the last couple of episodes where you're talking about really significant things from your childhood and your relationship with your dad. Your childhood is not as important to me as your relationship with your dad now. And of course the childhood informs that. And sometimes in therapy, I think things that can happen is they can, go out on a limb and say some really vulnerable things. And then it's like, okay, I want to scale back how much I'm going to be vulnerable today, or and maybe you hit a bit of a plateau. Maybe it's a plateau for a session or two or a couple of weeks, and it's like, okay, is this still working? Are you are you in a plateau right now? Do we need to keep meeting? Do you want to hold off until the next time something big comes up? Or
no, I don't know.
I'm not saying that to you. I'm just talking about generally.
Yeah.
I feel like therapy can be kind of a series of ups and downs and plateaus, and okay.
It definitely can be. I there are definitely sessions where I feel like really good afterwards, and then there are sessions where I feel the same, and then there are some sessions where I walk out and I feel like notably worse than when I walked in.
Yeah.
But to me, it's always been like, yeah, that's part of the process. You just keep going. That's like part of the deal. Yeah. Like there were times in my session this morning where I wanted to be like, I like felt myself getting angry. It's not like George was saying anything. I just was just feeling annoyed, I think there are times where confronting or thinking about confronting my feelings, it's like very low on my priority list. And going to therapy can sometimes trigger that, right? It's like sometimes the last thing you want to do is go to the gym. You wake up and you're like, I just don't want to do this. I've been doing it every day, or whatever it is. And
unlike the gym, you don't pay a monthly fee for therapy. And your fee doesn't change whether you go or not. And so, and the gyms are usually less expensive than this venture, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which again, shout out to Obamacare, because my God, it's wild to think that there was a time where the only access you had to mental health was if you could spend like $180 an hour or something like that, like cash, straight up, no insurance, no nothing. Like I remember when I was in college, I had to talk to my parents. I had to like convince them to give me a therapy budget so I could afford to go to therapy. Because every time I went, I think it was $150.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wild to think that was the norm.
Mm-hmm.
It was so inaccessible. Thankfully now there's health insurance. Well, even that is still inaccessible.
For a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah. But like, yeah.
I think you're giving too much credit to Obamacare because it's still a pretty tough industry, and we still don't have a good way of dealing with mental health just yet.
Yep. Way better than it was
maybe
15 years ago. I was talking to someone who had listened to the podcast. He is sort of like a mentor and a friend and business advisor. And he listened to the episode on alcohol because he was like, I don't drink. And so I saw alcohol and I was really interested. And he was like, I felt like he's like, I really enjoyed, I was, captivated, mesmerized, but I felt like I shouldn't be listening. Like I had snuck into a room.
And fly on the wall.
Yeah. And I was like, that's the point. I mean, I want to expand the conversation about therapy. I want to, expose people to it. And he's like, it's so fascinating because I have 2 daughters, or I forget how many daughters she has. And amongst their friend groups, like they'll say it would be weird to not have a therapist. Like they all have therapists. They all
Wow.
talk about it. And I was like, that is wild to me. From my experience, it was the complete opposite.
Yeah,
You just could not, I didn't tell even my closest friends for a couple of years. And so we just got to talking about the sort of progress that society has made in terms of mental health. And it's interesting to think like you're not cool unless you have a therapist now. It's like you're the odd kid out if you don't have one, as opposed to me growing up. It was the exact opposite.
Yeah, I support that new peer pressure.
Yeah, like that's kind of some humor to that of like, oh, you don't have a therapist, and then you're like getting bullied for not having a therapist. Obviously, bullying is not funny, but it would be, again, the polar opposite. Yeah.
And I think our time in here is complicated even more because there's always going to be a part in your mind about driving content,
Yeah.
delivering good content.
Delivering the goods. Which,
And I imagine that it's changed a little bit. Like in our first couple of times together, you would have notes, things that you you had prepared and things like that. And some people come to therapy with notes. Some people will whip out a notebook or a Post-it note or something like, here are the things I want to talk about today.
yeah.
A lot of people don't. They have that more in their mind than on a piece of paper or something like that. And
Yeah, I didn't this week. And it's funny you bring that up because last session I had a list of things. And I got the feeling anytime I show up with
a list,
it's like it's forced or something. So
you feel that way about the list, or you feel like I think that way about the
I
list?
feel you think that way about the list. So I was like, okay, no list this week. It's a recipe for disaster.
This conversation is reminding me of a story my brother told me. He was dating somebody one time, and they were in a long distance relationship, and she was on her way to her therapy appointment, and she called him and said, I'm on my way to therapy, and I really need to talk to you because I have nothing to talk about in therapy, but I know that if we just spent 20 minutes talking, I'll be pissed off. I'll have a lot to talk about.
That's great. Is that real?
That's legit.
That's such a great reflection of human intimacy, human relationships.
Yeah. At least one that didn't last.
I was going to say, are they still together?
No. That's probably a really good thing.
That's great.
But that's odd to me. Like, I'm going to my therapist. I feel pressure to go. And I'm like, maybe you should just cancel. If you don't have anything to talk about, why push this? Why?
I just am always of the belief that there's always something. Humans are carrying so much stuff. I would go as far as my belief is like, it would be rare to show me a person who couldn't on any given day talk to a therapist for 20, 30 minutes. Right? Which that's an opinion, I'm not saying that, but to me,
that's an orientation too. I mean, that's a way of thinking about this, this venture of talk therapy, of talking to somebody. And I think there's probably wisdom and prudence in trying to figure out what things do I need to talk to people about, and what things do I just need to ponder, and what things do I just need to keep inside and think about myself and not share with somebody else until I'm good and ready to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are people on all ends and points on the spectrum, people who just talk about everything and people who don't talk about anything. And these people probably need to learn to shut up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And these people probably need to learn to open up a little bit more.
Yep.
And so, and I think they probably all people on that continuum probably have different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people who want to hear more and people who
want to hear less. Hey, Haley, probably I want to hear less camp.
She may be. But you may also represent to her like an aspiration, like, wow, he's so he's so free and open with all of his thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, I like that about him. I mean, they talk about opposites attracting, but I don't think of it as opposites as much as you have a set of strengths and ways of being in the world that are unique and interesting to me because I don't possess those. And when I'm with you, I get drawn out a little bit more. Or when I'm with you, I'm allowed the opportunity to be more inside myself, or whatever it is.
It would be interesting to hear. I don't know what her response to that would be in terms of like, does being around me feel like it allows her more freedom to be more expressive and open, or does it not have any effect, or what? Because it would be fun to think that. I mean, she's definitely weirder around me. You know, I see her weirdness come out.
Probably that's also code for probably more comfortable with you.
Yeah, which I like.
Yeah,
it makes me happy to see her. In fact, I kind of peer pressure her to like bring that out in front of more people more often, because I feel like
goof shaming.
Yeah,
her inner goof or inner goofball.
I mean, I don't know. Anytime, I just feel like the world's a better place when more people bring their like. They don't feel like they have to have multiple versions of themselves.
Yeah, they're genuine, legit.
Yeah, the true self.
Yeah,
authentic self. Is that like an industry term? The authentic self.
Yeah.
That's what George says all the time. I'm really big on the authentic self. It makes me wonder what percent of the population on the spectrum of authenticity, where's the average person lie? It's like the gavel. Someone's slamming the gavel out there. Maybe that's a cue. I don't know.
Yeah. And cut.
Yeah. So we can wrap this up, I guess. Unless do you?
No, I think that's a good question. How many people are authentic? How many people want authenticity?
I would. This is why I'm not in charge of everyone. But I would like mandate authenticity.
Yeah.
I'd be like, like a man, like
regulate it.
Authenticity draconian, authenticity fascist.
And all your subjects would tell you exactly what they think of that.
Yeah.
Think of you.
Yep. And I would be like, nope, you can't sugarcoat it. You got to tell me. Right. There are times in my relationship with Haley where I'll like really push her to be like, no, I don't want you to answer with what you think I want to hear. And it makes her frustrated, and I think, she'll be like, I don't know what you want from me. I don't have some like secret, super authentic thing to say. Yeah, you could say I'm drunk with authenticity.
Really?
Instead of drunk with power. Yeah, that's what I was going for. Maybe that doesn't.
That's what you'd like to be known for? Or?
I think I can be a little bit overbearing in terms of like my demands for others in terms of authenticity. And
how do you know it's overbearing?
Well, because I feel like I'm probably too opinionated about it and too sure and too certain of this conclusion that I've made.
That authenticity, your total realness, is a value, that it's the best way to be.
And that the majority of people in Minnesota do not, are on the opposite end of authenticity spectrum.
I would broaden it from Minnesota. I'd say everywhere.
Yeah. I always just naturally assume like the closer you get to the coasts and like big cities, the closer you get to authenticity, but that could just be, no. You should. It's very dramatic head shake, Dr. Steve.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's an interesting opinion. Like the Midwest is a hub of fakeness, and there's all this
not fake. Yeah, that's
reality in New York and L.A.
L.A. obviously has no,
right? Well, we have more fake boobs than anything else, right? So
I don't mean like, I just mean authenticity in terms of like, this is what I think and feel. But you're right. Yeah, you go to L.A., you go anywhere and you meet someone, and it's very hard to get what someone really thinks. Which is particularly frustrating in a creative profession, right? Because you get a lot of, oh, this is great. Yeah, this is good. It's like, damn it. You don't care. So yeah, no, I hear your point. It's almost as if, I would say, I would amend and I'd say like Midwest is probably more authentic, but they are more polite about it. So they know what they think and they feel. They just don't communicate it.
Maybe.
As opposed to maybe, you go to LA, they don't even have a clue what they think. Yeah, so I'm going to...
If you're wondering about authenticity and, just look at social media and how many people are posting authentic posts, or how many people are posting the best dinner they've ever had and the best vacation they've ever had, or how many people are posting I have a friend who posts pictures of her kitchen.
When it's clean?
No. Just when it's an absolute bomb hit it.
That's
and she
great.
goes, this is my life.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's also my life. And so I value her doing that, because it's like, okay, yeah, that's what all our lives are like, except when we have guests come over.
I know. Don't get me started on social media, man.
Clean all day to have guests.
It is tough, and it's a lot of pressure on people to present a polished version of yourself all the time. That's why I like being so stupid on social media. It's kind of like my way of sticking my nose out.
Yeah, at the
establishment.
Yeah.
Like I used to do this thing anytime, a neti pot.
Yeah.
Anytime I use a neti pot, I'd post it on social media.
Okay.
Because it's a very like
a video of it?
Yeah. And I had a sinus infection at my brother's when he was getting married. It's a destination wedding, and they had a wedding hashtag. So I kept posting neti pot videos using their wedding hashtag, and my now sister-in-law got pissed and be like, stop posting neti pot videos on our hashtag. Good times. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. I hope I didn't bore you this time around, Dr. Steve.
I hope so too. I'm thinking about the next half hour.
Yeah, you mean the next session, right?
Next session.
Yeah, next week's session.
Next week's session.
To everyone listening, be as authentic as you are comfortable being. And catch you all later. Thanks for your time. Stay happy.
Take care.